Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another awesome weekend. Happy Sunday. I trust that we are all ready for the class. Party chairperson. Party chairperson.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Welcome. Our facilitator is in class. We will take the next 5 minutes to wait for others to join us. Please remember the class rules. You come into the class, you state your full names and the city political parties that you represent. Today we'll be talking about understanding the role of tax in governance, and our facilitator is ready. So just imagine his video is on, ready to take us on, and a couple of us are not here yet. So please do the needful by urging your classmates to please come into the class. Okay, we'll take the next 4 minutes to do that. And then at 17:05 on the dot, we will come back, introduce our facilitator, and then kick off. Thank you very much. We will take questions, if any, at the end of the session. Okay, talk to us pretty soon. Okay, 17:05, as earlier stated, we are starting shortly. Today we will be taking on understanding the role of tax in Governance, XII022. This is the 22nd lesson that we've had in the college for this cohort. Our facilitator is Mr. Joe Mijinyawa. I hope I got that right. Sincere apologies if I didn't do that. So he is a Nigerian born in Zaria. He started schooling in Zaria, Kaduna State, and proceeded to Ilorin, Kwara State. Later, he studied sociology at ABU Zaria and did his NYSC in Enugu State. He worked at First Bank of Nigeria PLC for over 12 years, and he is currently an ICANN student member. So Joe is passionate about good governance at every level. He enjoys reading, teaching, and engaging in meaningful conversations. Very short, brief, and concise profile. Mr. Joe, thank you and welcome. Please, may I kindly request that you help pronounce your name for me, just so that I know how it is pronounced. Thank you very much, and over to you. I hand over the virtual lectern to you. Welcome once again.
All right. Thank you, Adesina. My name is Joe Mijinyawa. Joe is for Joseph Mijinyawa. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you for inviting me to give this very passionate topic. I'll be speaking on understanding the role of tax in governance, and right away I would have suggested we wait for more participants, but I think time is of essence, so I think we can go ahead. So am I audible enough?
Yes, you are. Although
right.
you can maybe increase the volume. I don't know how, but it's good though.
Okay. All right. All right. So basically, we're talking about taxation, and tax is the means through which the government is funded, and it remains the main source of income for government, among other sources. Sorry, Adeshola, I don't know. Can my screen be shared from your end? I have my
hold on. Okay, your slides. Okay,
yes.
I would ask one of the admins to please share your slides.
Okay.
Okay, it's coming on now.
All right, thank you. So a lot of us will be wondering why certain taxes are levied on certain citizens. Many of us have different questions as it concerns taxes. Some people even hide their businesses because they don't want to pay taxes. But I believe in governance, if we were to look at it from that end, tax is a must do. If I find myself as a governor today in Nigeria, what will I do differently? That should be the question. And you can't be in governance if you are not passionate about taxation. If you're a legislator and you want to definitely make the government successful, one of the basic and only way is to grow revenue for government, and tax is the only way. The priorities of government, obviously, are to see that the citizens are protected, the lives and properties of citizens are protected. Now, the issue is this: why are we having issues when it comes to revenue in governance? I would look at this from a different perspective today. I got this from one of I think the CEO of one of Remita, yeah, I got it right, Remita, where he spoke about the 2 G's and the 2 T's. The 2 G's here, he talks about God and government, and the 2 T's, tithe and tax. Which one is our priority in governance? So this model will expose us to the role of tax in governance, as well as an understanding of why the government will always insist on taxes to run the affairs of the government. At the end of this, we should know the reasons for tax and taxation, the need for government to collect taxes, who should collect what tax, what are the basic principles of good tax system, and sources of our tax laws in Nigeria. There are different definitions as to what is tax. It's the money that you have to pay to government so that it can pay for public services. It's a monetary charge imposed by the government on persons, entities, or property levied to yield public revenue. Based on the various definitions we have, we can say tax is a compulsory contribution levied by a government of a country on the incomes, profits, goods and services, or properties of individuals or corporate persons, trusts, and settlements. Such taxes are used for carrying out governmental functions, which include maintenance of law and order, provision of infrastructure, health and education of the citizens, or as a fiscal tool for controlling the economy. I have a definition there. I'm sure the slide will be shared to the participants so that we don't have to go through everything. Now, when we look at governance, it's about monitoring and controlling decisions, as well as giving leadership and direction. It is concerned with in whose interest is the country governed, who has the power to make decisions for the country, how is the power used, for what aim or purpose is power used, who else might influence the governance of the country, are the governors held responsible or accountable for the way they govern their states? Now, you would agree with me that tax has always been there from time immemorial. I think in one of the holy books, it was stated that give unto Caesar what is for Caesar and unto God what is for God. It means that it's always been there. Now, I don't know, prior to now, some of us might be wondering if tax is a punitive measure. Well, I want to disabuse your mind that tax is compulsory. And we are students of politeracy, aspiring to be in government at one point or the other. It therefore means that tax should be our guide. It should be very close to us. It should be on our fingertips. We should understand it. We should tell people about it, because that is where we would get our major sources of funds as people in governance. Now, the history of taxation dates back in Nigeria, for instance, from the pre-colonial era. Even before the white people came, we had the Obas, the Emirs, the Atars, Ohinois, and all that, who also had their own means of collecting these taxes from the citizens. There's Zakat, which is levied on Muslims for educational, charitable, and religious purposes. We have Kudin Kasa, a form of agricultural tax on utilization of land. We have Shuka, levied on ownership of cattle based on the number of cattle. Ishakole, contribution of farm products as a form of land tax in exchange for the use of land for agricultural purposes. Payable to obas, chiefs, family, community heads. Owori, that is individual taxes payable in cash or kind in returns for services. All these various taxes, even the Osusuye Amachi Nku for palm fruits, which were taxes from the eastern part of Nigeria, in Rivers and Bayelsa states, block hunting and fishing, and also other forms of taxation, whereby male adults offer assets in form of canoes, boats, nets, and other fishing equipment to fish jointly, while the female sell the harvested fish, and the sales proceeds are used in financing community projects. So you would agree with me that whether we like it or not, tax is the source of revenue for governance, and thereby we should make it a very part of us. During the colonial era, we had their own examples of laws: Proclamation Law of 1914, Native Law Ordinance, Non-Natives Protectorate Tax Ordinance 1931. All these were later consolidated with subsequent amendments in 1939. The ordinance was later repealed and incorporated into the Taxation Ordinance number 4 of 1940 and subsequently reenacted as the Income Tax Ordinance 1943. So, in order to achieve uniformity in the system of taxation throughout the geographical entity called Nigeria, the colonial government set up the Ringsman Commission in 1958. The commission recommended the introduction of uniform basic income tax principles. All this came about, and then the recommendation was accepted by government, which incorporated same in 1960 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This led to the promulgation of the Income Tax Management of 1961 and the Companies Income Tax Act of 1961. All these taxes have grown, and some of them have been repealed and reenacted. And so you would have them detailed in the slides when you go through. You would also know that the taxes have also been some changes have been made in 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022 Finance Acts. And these adjustments or amendments are meant to encourage people to pay up taxes in order to make tax more appealing to the citizens. Now, some of the objectives of tax include revenue generation. That is the major thing. We have insurgents here and there. We have issues of national issues, different kinds of issues at both federal, state, and local government. You would ask yourself, how does the government make up this money? Is it just by selling oil, crude oil? Of course, we know that the market for crude oil is even dwindling. We're having issues, but the government must still move. And so revenue generation is one of the objectives, the major objectives of taxation in Nigeria. It's also a form of redistribution of income and wealth, so that when we collect from those at the top, it is shared equally among citizens. This is achieved by the graduation of progressiveness of the rates at which the taxes are levied. Like the personal income tax, it's graded from 9% up to 24%, depending on your level of income. And so on that basis, we would say that it gives tax the objective of redistribution of income and wealth. It's also a way of managing the economy. Taxation can be used to achieve specific economic objectives of the nation. It can be used to reduce the use of certain items. Like we have the luxury tax. I think Lagos State is very key in this. They introduced luxury tax for certain luxury items. So if you're bringing in a yacht into Nigeria, your customs duties, of course, will be definitely different. And then you'll be paying a certain level of taxes so that you would pay for the luxury you're enjoying. Harmonization of economic objectives is also another objective of taxation. For example, tax system can be employed by member states of ECOWAS so as to achieve the philosophy of the single market, free movement of people and goods within the region. Finally, taxation is a device to improve gross national income, induce economic development, and influence favorable balance of payments with other countries. We have the principles of taxation. Now, when we say principles of taxation, we're referring to the fact that every tax should, in one way or the other, have these basic principles. Equity, that every taxable person should be taxed according to his ability. So you see that tax is not actually supposed to be punitive. It's not here to be bullish. It's meant to be for those that have more to pay more, those that have less should pay less. There should be certainty. The time for payment, the mode of payment, the amount that should be paid should be certain. It should be convenient. I think Nigeria has achieved a great feat on this. The Federal Inland Revenue Service, I think, introduced the Tax Pro Max for corporate organizations who pay their companies' income taxes and VAT to the Federal Inland Revenue. It's so convenient that taxpayers can pay without having to go to the office. Administrative efficiency, there should be very, very good and transparent process and must not cause economic distortion to the taxpayers. Simplicity, it should be simple to understand. It should be productive. It should be flexible and stable. So it shouldn't be a case of this year you pay 7.5%, next year you're paying 10%, the other year no. It should be as flexible and stable at the same time so that people would not see it as a burden. We'd also look at the types of taxes, which is the proportional tax. For instance, a flat rate of 20% is a tax which objective is redistribution of income for the well-to-do to the less privileged. So you would look at it that like companies income tax has a flat rate, although it's graded now. For companies that are below 20 million turnover, they don't pay, it's 0%. Then 20 million up to 100 million, they pay 20%. And then those above that would pay 30%. And that's to tell you that it's proportional. So you would pay according to your abilities. And it is progressive. This form of tax is graduated in terms of high rates of tax as income increases, like the personal income tax I mentioned earlier. For the first 300, there's a rate of 9%. The next 300 has 11%. The next 500 has its own percentage. Next 500 again has its own percentage. And then the first 1.6 has its own percentage, and the highest of it all is 24%. Regressive tax. This type of tax is not applicable, is not common, is not commonly applied because the tax payable decreases as the taxpayer's income increases, which is not in line with the principle of fairness. And so it is not a common type of tax. Now, we'll also look at the second form of classification by incidence as follows. We have the direct taxes, which are personal income tax, companies income tax, capital gains tax, tertiary education tax, the petroleum tax, which is now the hydrocarbon tax based on Petroleum Industry Act of 2021. Then we have the indirect taxes. These taxes are not particularly directly felt by the person paying it, like the value added tax. When you buy goods, you just hear that it's 25,000, you just buy. But indirectly, you have paid VAT on it, but it's not spelled out. In some cases, it is. In most cases, it is not spelled out. So you just pay up and then you think, okay, nothing concerns me with VAT, but then you have paid your VAT. You have the stamp duties, the excise duties, and the customs duties. The importer, for instance, who imports his goods, he would pay these import duties, excise duties, and incorporate that cost into his pricing. And so you as a final consumer will be paying for that without knowing that you have paid excise duties and customs duties. At this point, I want to find out if we have anyone who has any concerns, who wants to say something. If there's anything I have skipped or someone has a question, I'm free to it, just so that I'm sure I'm carrying everyone along. So are we good? Any questions? Do we have any questions in the box?
None for now. We just had conversations and chat. Well, one thing I wanted to ask, I wanted to point out when you said that taxes are majorly or primarily the only way the government can raise revenue. I was going to ask that, is that the only, what are, and this is, I'm asking this question to know if that's basically it for even developed countries, or there are other ways that the government can seek out to generate more revenue as opposed to, heavily burdening citizens.
All right. So in this case, I would say it is the major source of revenue. We have other sources, which comes from even sale of assets. You would hear maybe the government they're selling parts of its assets to companies. You would have also the petroleum sale of crude oil. We also have sale of licenses for those who want to go into mining. These are all sources of income for the government. But you see, when you look at the case of Nigeria, for instance, it's the list of it. Those other sources are really, they're not as much. But when you look at how much the government makes, when, for instance, if there's a good stable economy, for instance, you would have investors coming in, and then when you are able to tax them appropriately, you would get some funds. And when you talk about crude oil, for instance, you would agree with me that there are a lot of issues centered around exploration and selling of crude oil. But for the government to be sure of what it's going to get, tax is the major thing. Tax is the major thing. You in the midst of that, you have other sources like the fines and levies, like the road safety, the fines they generate, all these accrue to make up the revenue for government. But basically, majorly, for people who live in Nigeria, you just must agree with me that revenue for government has to come through taxes, because if you think of any other thing, you won't get as much. But in terms of compliance and all that, you would be able to get this payment into
You're muted, sir. You're muted.
Atiba Adediran, this is not too clear to me.
Do you want him to speak? We can ask him to speak if it's a question or a contribution.
I'm not too sure. Well, would allow that for maybe
Later.
the question.
Okay, good. Okay,
yes.
You can go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you. So we now have, we'll be discussing about the tripod of taxation, which talks about the tax policies, the tax administration, the tax laws. Now, when you talk about the tax policies, they're general statements of intention, which guide the thinking and action of all concerned towards the realization of set goals. They usually include movement of emphasis from income tax consumption tax, that is less, pursuance of a tax law regime with the aim of reducing individual tax burden, widening the tax net, and encouraging savings and investments. Introduction of the self-assessment scheme to encourage taxpayer participation in tax assessment process. Just like I mentioned earlier, the Federal Inland Revenue Service introduced the Tax Promax, which has been a very good fit for them in terms of collection of taxes. Then we have the tax laws. In Nigeria, for instance, we have the personal income taxes. Basically, the personal income tax is collected by the states. The states are the ones that administer these taxes to residents of their states. For armed forces, the military and the police, paramilitary, they pay to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. But the personal income tax for federal civil servants, depending on their state of residence, they pay to the state. The company's income tax is paid by companies incorporated under the Corporate Affairs Commission. They pay directly to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Now, the personal income tax, I want to make a little comment on that. It has its own graded rates. I think I mentioned it earlier. For different levels of income, you pay them at that. And then if you have lived in a state, for instance, I think there was a dispute some time back where some banks, because their corporate headquarters is in Lagos, were paying the personal income taxes to Lagos State. And so other states now came up and disputed and disagreed with them and said they should allow them to pay their income taxes to the states where the staff are resident. And so the Joint Tax Board came into it, and then they were able to resolve that. Then we have the capital gains tax. This tax is levied on the sale of properties. For instance, you purchase a vehicle or you own a land as an individual, for instance. And ordinarily, if Nigeria is to work, the government is supposed to be aware that you own that asset through the Asset Declaration Act. Now, if you declare that and sometime later in life, you decide, oh, this land, someone needs it, I need to get money, what, and you sell it. If you made a gain, after all expenses paid, you paid for revaluation, you paid for the person that, the agent that did the marketing, everything you have paid now, and you have a gain on that sale, you are expected as an individual to pay to your states. If it is a corporate organization, that corporate organization is supposed to pay to Federal Inland Revenue Service. You would agree with me that a lot of us are not aware of this. A lot of us do not comply to this. And so we are charging our government of a lot of funds. We have the value added tax. We have the Education Tax Act, which is also collected from corporate organizations. When they are paying their company's income taxes, they're expected to also pay a percentage for education tax. We have the stamp duties for agreements. If you're going into an agreement with someone for a business transaction, there should be a value for such a transaction, and a percentage should be paid as stamp duties to either the state for individuals or to the Federal Inland Revenue Service in the case of corporates. We have the hydrocarbon tax, which is also the one that guides the petroleum industry. So in Nigeria, the constitution vests the legislation of income tax, whether personal or corporate, on the federal government in order to promote uniformity. However, the three tiers of government share the administration of the various taxes. Tax laws are reviewed periodically in line with the changes in the social, political, and economic conditions of the country. The power to impose tax in Nigeria within the exclusive legislative authority of the federal government. There are various machineries set up by the government to ensure strict compliance of these laws. Non-compliance attracts penalties and fines. So now we'll talk about the tax administration, which is practically the interpretation and application of the taxes. These bodies are charged with the administration of tax in Nigeria: the federal, the state, and the local government. The authorities are as follows. We have the Federal Inland Revenue Service, who collects for corporate organizations, corporate businesses. The state internal revenue services of each state, including the Federal Capital Territory, collect for individuals and businesses that are not corporate businesses, like the enterprises, partnerships. They all pay under the state internal revenue service. And then we have also the market levies, the other levies that are being collected by the local government revenue committee. Now, these tax laws did not just come up in Nigeria by mistake. They got their sources from the customary laws. Like I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the history, you'd know that some of these things have been in existence even before the colonial intervention in Nigeria. Some of them are religiously inclined. And then examples, like I mentioned earlier, the Ishakole, Ususunku, the Zakat, and all they got their sources from the customary law, and which was now later modified to fit into the current situation. That is how we got to where we are today, having the personal income tax and all that. We have the statute laws. These are tax legislation passed by acts of the National and State Assemblies. It is possible you're vying to come out for a position for House of Assembly or House of Rep, and you feel that there's a part of the economy that is running very smoothly, and a lot of people are making money, but nothing is coming out of it. Now, if you get the chance to pass that bill into the House and it becomes an act or a law, that is also going to mean that it becomes a type of law, or a particular law will be amended. In that case, it is now also a source to the law. So that's how we have the statute laws. Then the case laws, as a result of issues that have happened in the past, Supreme Court judgments, appeal court judgments, it could get its source from such case laws. Then we have the circulars, issued by and practices of the Inland Revenue. We have opinions of tax experts. We have budget pronouncements of relevant ministries. And then the Constitution of Nigeria spells it out also as one of the basic, civic rights, civic responsibilities of every citizen to pay his taxes. Now, before I conclude, I just want to say something. I mentioned something about the 2Gs and the 2Ts earlier. Now, our emphasis as a nation determines how we make our decisions. You would agree with me that in some countries of the world, as people are growing, they are aware of taxes. Children know that their parents pay taxes, and that's why they go to school for free. They understand the fact that when you pick up an item and it's of a high value, you're going to pay high taxes. And so it guides their thinking. But on the other hand, when you don't know about this thing, the issue of tax, it becomes a stranger to you when people are speaking about it. And so the emphasis here is, if we care about the government and we make people understand what the government is all about, and we tell them, or we teach our younger ones the fact that taxes are paid because the government needs to be run, then you would have less of people running away from taxes. But on the other hand, when you teach your children to pay more attention to tithes, which is paid to God, then they would see tax being paid to government as not necessary. So I think at this point, I want to appeal to our conscience, appeal to our persons, that we should, at every level, try to see how we can change the perception of common Nigerians, for them to understand the fact that payment of taxes is a government, is a civic responsibility, and it has to be paid to the government, while we leave the other side of the G and its T to be as less relevant. Because you would agree with me that if today we had more awareness about taxes, government will not be crying for revenue, we will not be borrowing. But as it is, we're taxed as a country to see that we have to borrow to meet up our basic needs as a country. Meanwhile, there are a lot of other businesses, or I would say religious bodies, that are making a lot, and they don't pay taxes. They are exempted from the taxes, but people see it as being easier to pay up that part of their life savings or that part of their income without paying taxes. So I think we need to work on our psyche to see that we are able to make people understand the role of tax, so that when we find ourselves in good positions, by the grace of God, would have legislators from this group, would have governors, would have even the president of Nigeria, would be able to say, yes, we did a lot of difference in making people understand the role of tax in governance. And on this note, it is pertinent to note that taxes are collected in order for the government to have adequate funds to run the affairs of a country or state, as the case may be. For the government to be able to defend her territories, build infrastructure, and also ensure that its citizens are adequately paid their remunerations, tax must be involved. As such, in governance, we must know that tax is of utmost importance and must be collected by government. It should also be noted that the payment of tax is a constitutional duty of every citizen, and everyone should abide by this. As the saying goes, lastly, give unto Caesar what is for Caesar, and unto God what is for God. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. That was succinctly put. Okay. I see that some individuals have shared, comments, inputs, just their own thoughts about taxes. Right now, we'll take questions, and I'd like for you to, okay, we have 2 hands up already. So I'll ask each person to unmute their microphones to ask questions or, okay, I can't pronounce this name. Let me just ask you to unmute.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
The name is Seyunen. Yes, sir. Thank you for your presentation. Mine is more of a comment, or I would say a sentiment, or a perspective, more like. I feel like a lot of Nigerians do not feel the obligation to pay their taxes because they feel like, oh, government will somehow squander the taxes that they are working hard to pay, and they feel like, oh, so how is this going to help me? This is only just going to be put in certain coffers of government that somebody will just misuse and use for his own family's benefit and all of that and all of that. So I think that's a sentiment that is very prevalent within the Nigerian space. And conversely, I feel like the government also has a duty to show that they are not negligent about the resources and the taxes people pay. Because even in saner climes that people are more diligent in paying their taxes, they actually see systems work. They see that, oh, these taxes are actually doing something in the society. Whereas I feel like in Nigeria, there's this culture of, oh, the system is falling apart, structures are falling apart. Even if we're paying these taxes, is going into somebody's personal account. So what really is the basis for it? And of course, putting it in church is more, I would say in loose terms, it's more a better bet, because if you give it to God, God will give you back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I truly appreciate your contribution. Now, I want to give a very, very simple, I try to make things as simple as they should be. Now, imagine as the head of your family, you probably are expecting a particular amount of money as salary every month. Now, if, for instance, you now give your family, your wife or your husband and your kids the opportunity to say what they want to buy or what they want to use that money for. However, remember that you are the head of the family, you are the breadwinner, and so you know what you want for the house. But they are actually asking you for sneakers, they're asking you for chocolates, they're asking you for this, for that, and nobody has said anything about gas. Nobody has said anything about the security of the house. And you are now thinking, I need to do CCTV, I need to do this, I need to do that. Permit me to say that is the case of government. The priorities of the citizens are hardly the priorities of the government. The government obviously has its own priorities. We have insurgents. Do you know what it means to buy arms? In order to see that remember that these are consumables. I'll call them consumables because if you buy bullets, you're not getting anything from that bullet. You must shoot it out. And once you shoot it out, you're not getting it back. And a lot of other ways in which the government spends. The government must pay salaries for its civil servants. It's from all this revenue. And how much is the revenue at the end of the day? So that's why the emphasis should be that we, as citizens in politics or vying for political positions, we should think around it and see how else to make our taxes more attractive. If you sit down to wail about what the government does, what the government does not do, believe me, we will continue rolling on this same track. But the moment you understand the fact that, yes, the government is doing a lot. We have roads they're working on. The insecurity is ongoing. It has not gone anywhere. We still enjoy, we are still suffering from it. We still enjoy certain free amenities. And in fact, like the recent sensitive case of fuel subsidy, we've not asked ourselves, where was the government getting money to pay for that subsidy? Yes, that's story for another day. But see, I want to admonish us to really think not as the common citizen, but as citizens that are going to be leaders soon, to see that we are working towards enforcing taxes or making taxes more attractive to citizens, so that when you get there, you would obviously have a reason to say, yes, things are going to change because you will do it differently. Thank you very much.
Okay. As you were speaking, more hands got raised. So, Akombi, I'm asking you to unmute so you can ask your question.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah. Now, we have paid tax. Government prepare budgets every year at all levels. When they are reading the budget, we are aware. Now, when the budget cycle passes, the government has not been able to come back to us and say, see, this budget we prepare in January, this is December. This also amount that you gave us, this is what we spend, so as such that the citizen can now assess that, okay, you bought this laptop at 1 million. Does it really worth 1 million? That has not been happening, especially at state and local governments. And I want to believe, my question is rather, how do we make the state and the local government especially to come and account for that budget we prepare in January that we have paid tax that they have gone to spend to us? How? Because when you write to local government, they hardly respond. You cannot go to offices and say, well, how do we hold them to account for those taxes that we have paid, so that we know that, yeah, this one spent our money very well, but this one went lavishly with our money. This one has taken what he ought not to get, or he has spent more than what, things like that. That is my question. How do we hold them accountable at local government and states? How?
Thank you very much, Akombi. I would want to also enlighten us that the Office of the Accountant General at both the federal and state level prepares the financial statements of the federal government and the state, as the case may be. Now, I don't know whether it is on the CBN portal or the Federal Ministry of Finance portal. You would find the financial statement of Nigeria. It's a historical detail of all the income and expenditure of the government. And if you want to query it, there are channels for that on that level. We have the Public Accounts Committee at the Senate level. We have the Auditor General's office. They look at these things. Every local government, the 774 and the 36 states, including the federal capital, submit their financial statements to the Office of Accountant General, who prepares the consolidated federal government financial statements and sends to the Auditor General, who now looks at it before they send it back to the Senate. Now, it means that there are channels, but the problem is, are we aware of those channels? Do we know that these things happen? So we need to open our eyes and open our ears to certain things. I am not sure. I would get back to you on that, maybe through Adeshola or someone, on how you can get the financial statement of Nigeria. It is there. It's open to the public. You can view it. You would see everything that was done, the income, the expenditure, the borrowings, everything is spelled out there. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I'm not sure a lot of people knew that. Thank you so much, sir. I'll take Solomon. Let's try to make the questions really brief or the comments so that we can take everyone. I've asked you to unmute, Solomon.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for this class. What I'm referencing to the other time was the pronouncement by Minister of Finance on the issue of this external.
Hello, Solomon.
Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah.
You're far away from your device, or you're using the Bluetooth again, and we can't hear you clearly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I said the question I'm trying to raise then was the pronouncement by a minister of finance during Buhari's regime that they lost some money at the petroleum sector due to some I don't know how to the way it was quoted there. And the question there was that does it mean that there are some set of people that they are waiving taxes for when it has to do with tax? Because they summed the money to some, I don't remember the actual figure. It was a tug of war there when the matter was raised that some persons were agitating that when these individuals can be waived, what happens to the common citizens? And you talked about the second question, you talked about local government. Please, can you expatiate on the taxes from local government? Because at some point, local government also, they collect tax. State government, they collect tax, and the federal government also. 3, the private sectors. I think, let me use this instance because it has occurred to me. At a place where I work in private school, they will say they are paying the taxes together. By the time we demanded for the clearance, anytime we have anything to do with the government, they tell us until our guy comes with his tax clearance. I was like, how can this work? Each workers ought to have a tax clearance, not that they said they sum everything together on one person's name. Please, can you enlighten me on this? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for those pointers. For tax waivers, these are some of the measures taken by the federal government to encourage certain kind of businesses. Now, there's what we call pioneer status, where if you're coming in with a new kind of business, maybe that has to do with waste management or something, some of these new innovations, you are entitled, you have to apply. That's the first thing. You have to apply, and then they would come and view your business, look at it, you go for like an interview, and then they will approve waivers for you. The waiver is for the first 3 years, which is also renewable for another 2 years. So if, for instance, you're also into exports, you're entitled to certain types of waivers on taxes. So the pronouncement by the Minister of Finance was the fact that I want to assume that she was looking at the leakage, I wouldn't call it a leakage, but the amount that was hanging that should have been paid in, but approvals were given for the waiving of such taxes. And we will not be able to collect those taxes until such waivers have elapsed. So that is what makes up the issue of that tax waiver, I think if I'm getting it correctly. Now, concerning petroleum products and all that, it was still part of ways of the government trying to see how they can reduce the issue of subsidy and make the product available to the common citizen. Unfortunately, you would agree with me that sometimes in the midst of the government trying to do something good, people take advantage of it to do other things. Now, the type of taxes that are collected by the local government, there are almost 50. You have the market stalls, you have the parking lot, you have street blockage, you have, there are a lot of them. I think signages, you have for certain kind of signages for individuals, you have, there are a lot. I don't have the list readily available, but I can assure you that there are a lot of taxes that are being collected by the local government. That is, if we are going to look at it from the federal government who collects from corporate organizations, the state which takes from civil servants, and certain other taxes are assigned to the state. Then you have the local government taxes, which can be amended at the instance of the state governor. It's not spelled out on, he can decide to say, okay, let the state stop collecting this type of tax, let the local governments be the ones to collect it. So the local government revenue committee will be the ones to collect such taxes, but they're quite a number. They collect the highest number of taxes. Now, concerning tax clearance, every organization, either private sector, public sector, that has its staff is supposed to submit those returns to the State Internal Revenue Service of where the company resides or where the staff reside, if they reside in different states other than where the corporate headquarters is. Now, I would say it clearly that if you don't have a professional handling that, definitely there will be a lot of leakages. That's the truth. Because the way you sounded, it means that there's either something not going right somewhere for them not to be able to give you your tax clearance. Because if they say they are waiting for the CEO to bring his own tax clearance before they can give tax, then there's something amiss. Because if you submit your monthly returns to a particular office and you go back to the office and say, oh yeah, we want tax, and then they tell you that something, that that means they didn't remit it. So I think it's something that you either press on your organization to get a tax consultant that is quite skilled in that aspect to help you guys work it out to get your tax clearance. If not, I think this might linger beyond what you expect. Thank you.
Okay. I see me. I'll ask you to unmute. Then finally, I know David.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you again for this topic. Before I go into my question, I want the speaker, the point you made about being the head of the house and head of the family and what your children and wife want versus what you want to do for the family. If you're looking at it in government perspective, there's a point where you had to have stakeholder engagement. Did the head of the family engage with the stakeholders to know, okay, this is what you want versus this is what I want to provide for you? And then we might find a meeting point, which I think is an aspect that in governance people fail to see. I'm not saying that what the government wants to provide for the people is not necessary or important, but sometimes you might say you want to build a four-lane road, but the people just want a bridge across a river that will make them happy at that initial point. But I'm just digressing on that one. My question with regards to tax is something that I engage with people with regards to generation of revenue generation. What's your opinion when a business wants to come into a state or a local government, and then the business is asking for a tax holiday or tax benefits, they're not paying taxes or some other incentives, so that they can employ people? And when they employ those people generate taxes and then helps to boost the revenue of the local government or the state or even the federal governments. I just want to know your position with regards to like tax incentives like that for businesses.
All right, thank you very much, Adini, for your contribution. I truly love that part of it when you said stakeholders engagement. Well, it was just a very, very kind of illustration just to bring it home to everyone. Well, concerning revenue generation and tax waivers or tax holidays, they are welcome ideas, and it happens every now and then. In fact, I think if I'm not mistaken, Dangote was able to construct a road in Lagos or something like that. And that was like a tax relief for him because he decided to go into infrastructure. And I'm sure by that, he gave more people jobs. And I'm sure somehow Lagos State has benefited from those taxes one way or the other. So I think it's a good idea. It's a give and take. It's like you're letting go of this part of it, but you're still going to get it on the other hand. But I will assure you that in private sector accounting, some of these issues do not just come as easy as we see them. They have their own regulatory framework that guides decisions in public sector. And so that's why certain things that we expect to happen, maybe looking at it from the private sector perspective, might not necessarily happen that way when it comes to public sector issues. Thank you very much.
Okay, and finally, we take the Aina David.
Thank you very much, Sal, for the class. I'm sorry, my network was fluctuating. That was why I was going in and coming. I'm going out and coming in. So the first aspect that I want to, an observation though, is where you said people mixing, I think church tithes, when they are paying more attention and emphasis on tithes, they may end up not paying tax. But I will say, did I get
Hello?
it right, sir? Did I get you right?
I didn't get that. Can you please
I
rephrase?
said you said
I didn't get that.
when parents are emphasizing more on payment of
Network keeps
tithes,
going. Your network
that
is stable.
can you get me now?
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay. So what I just want to say is that well, even the Bible wants us to pay tithe, and that was why Jesus was like, okay, pay what belongs to, give what belongs to Caesar. So even the Bible does not encourage people not paying tithe. So it is our responsibility as a good citizen to pay tithe. But my own question now is that we find, I think majorly people find it difficult to pay tax because we have observed the management of the government fund, the way people do and undo with government fund. They call it national cake. That at the end of the day, me paying tax, they trying to squander it anyhow. That's the major reason why I think people don't pay tax and the challenge we have in Nigeria. And also there are some organizations that are tax evasion, like they try as much as possible to evade themselves from paying tax. What is the government's intervention in that kind of category? So that's my question.
All right, thank you. David, I like your contribution. You said even the Bible encourages us to pay tithe and tax. Good, it's a good thing. But I think what I just wanted to say concerning that was the fact that the emphasis, which one do we give more emphasis to as a nation, as citizens? We give emphasis to one over the other, and that is why one is suffering. However, it's not a debate. It's just a way of fine-tuning our minds to give ourselves a better mindset in order to achieve what we want to attain. Now, I want you to also look at taxation from the angle of governance, you sitting at the government side and not the citizen side. Now, when you sit on that side of it, you would agree with me that yes, the slogan of people talking about national cake is there and what have you, but in most cases, those in governance are burdened by a lot, and they have a lot they want to achieve when they talk about people should pay their taxes. But in the end of it, when we talk about tax evasions and tax, there are different measures that are being taken by the federal government at different levels in order to see that they get people to pay their taxes. I think there's even a process between Federal Inland Revenue Service, CAC, where they are able to get, thank you. They're able to get your bank data and provide such to the tax authorities so that they can follow up. I'm sure some of you might have experienced it or have heard it, that somebody will be sitting down in his office and then they'll serve him a letter from Inland Revenue Service telling him that, Oga, we saw a transaction of 70 million in your account. Oh yeah, come and pay us 25 million. The person will start panicking. It's not my money. It's just my friend that sent it through me. But you see, awareness, if we're aware of these things, tax is not punitive. Do you know that you can have a turnover of over 100 million? And at the end of the day, when you take out your allowable expenses, you take out your capital allowances and everything, what you might be paying might be 2 million. But you see, we think that automatically, if I do a business of 100 million, 30 million is going to government. That's not true. This tax we're talking of is not as plenty from each individual as we think. Most of Nigeria's tax that we're looking at, that we think it is the citizens that are paying it, is still from this oil business. Most of it. Then also the international companies that come in to do business because they are aware that they must pay their taxes. So they always ensure that they comply. But do you and me doing business, that small money that we're made, for us to discipline ourselves to say, oh yeah, oh, come and take your own. We hardly do. Somebody selling soft drinks, somebody selling little things that ordinarily should charge VAT and remit to the appropriate quotas. We don't. We see it as, wait to concern me, it's my money, it's my profit. No. If you sell an item and there's a VAT of, or you provide a service and there's a VAT of 7.5%, you're supposed to collect such transactions and pay up, not looking at all that as your profit. So it comes not just to us as a call to pay, but it is also a call for us to discipline ourselves in businesses. And as much as you interact with people, and as much as you intend to become somebody in governance, someone in government tomorrow, you need to be sure that you are able to educate people on the fact that they need to pay their taxes. Thank you very much.
Do we have any further questions or comments? Thank you so much, sir. This has been really insightful.
Thank you very much.
You know, on the concept of taxes. Thank you. Do we have any further questions? Any hands raised? Okay. I think you did brilliant work. I want to confirm if the slides were shared with the board members. It's something that we might just need to go through once again to familiarize ourselves, especially with the person that asked about the type of taxes that which level of government each tier is responsible for, so that we can refer to the right laws. All right. Thank you so much once again. It's been a lovely Sunday evening.
Thank you very much, Electoral College.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to having you once again once we call on you. Thank you for the values that you shared and the time spent. We appreciate you. Forward members, please say thank you with an emoji in the chat box just to appreciate the facilitator. All right. I'm just going to hand over to the admin for any announcements they might have for the class. And then we round off this evening session, or this weekend session. Over to you, Chalia or Lisa. Lisa. Chalia.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Adishola, for the great moderation this evening. And thank you, everyone. Though the attendance is 4, I must say. So, party chairpersons, please notify your members to always join class, as it's very important. So, see you all next week again, and have a great week. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.